Okie doke. So, the vision lab, your eye. So, again, talking about special senses, you have a very specific type of receptor in the back of your eye called a photoreceptor. Photo means light. So, this is a light receptor. It is the only receptor that you have in your body that actually does respond to light. So, looking at the external anatomy of your eye, you've got the upper eyelid, the lower eyelid, the eyebrow, and the eyelashes. All of these, from your lids to your brows to your lashes, are designed to protect your eye. Your eyelids close if something gets too close to your eye. Your eyebrows are there to catch things. For example, if you're sweating and sweat is trickling down your face, hopefully the eyebrow catches it and doesn't actually go into your eye. For those girls that do the Sharpie eyebrow thing and they completely take their eyebrows off, that isn't a good thing. You can shape your eyebrows. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying walk around with a unibrow, but by the same token, you do need these. There is a purpose behind them. The eyelashes are the same. The eyelashes stick out in front of your eye, which basically means if you close your eyes or something gets close to your eyes, hopefully it gets caught in the eyelashes and doesn't actually go into your eye. Best example I can think of is cat fur. I've always got cat fur everywhere because I have 2 cats. So every now and again, I'll find cat fur in my eyelashes and I'll go, ugh. But at the same time, I would rather it be on my eyelashes than be in my eye because it's protective. Now, where those 2 eyelids meet on the outside and the inside. So the inside or medial side of your eye is the one closest to your nose. The lateral or outside of your eye is the one closest to your shoulder. Where the top and bottom lids meet is called the commissure. So you've got 2 commissures. You've got a medial commissure where they meet closest to your nose, and you've got a lateral commissure where they meet closest to your shoulder. Looking at the eye again, you can see that here in the medial commissure, there's actually kind of a pink lump. That pink lump is called the lacrimal carbuncle. It is the drainage point for your tears. The lacrimal gland is actually your tear-producing gland, and it actually exists up here and drains into your eye this direction. But as it does that, that fluid goes over here and eventually drains out of your eye. Now, that drainage that's happening, if you've ever cried and you notice your nose runs, yeah, that drainage that's happening actually goes out through your nose. Now, most of the time, we're producing so little by way of volume of tears, we don't even notice that those are there. But when we weep or when we cry, we kind of overflow the system. Now, looking at the front of the eye itself, the white of your eye is called the sclera, okay? The colored portion of your eye is called the iris. The whole dead center in the middle of your eye is called the pupil. The pupil is actually a lack of something. You can't put your finger on a pupil because the pupil is a hole, but it's the hole that is the pupil. Now, the sclera, as it comes toward the front of the eye, actually turns into what we call the cornea. The cornea is clear like glass. Because we are talking about using photoreceptors, right? Then light has to be able to get into our eye. So the cornea should be clear like glass so that the light just basically goes through it like it would a window. Now, looking at the outside of the eye, we have these extrinsic muscles. Extrinsic. Extrinsic just means outside. In other words, they're on the outside of the eye, they're not on the inside of the eye. These extrinsic muscles actually shift your eye around. If you want to look up, if you want to look down, if you want to look toward your nose, if you want to look toward your shoulder, if you want to roll your eyes, these are the muscles that allow you to do that. So we've got two different types of muscles we talk about. We've got the rectus muscles and we've got the oblique muscles. Rectus, if you think back to AP1, rectus meant straight. The fibers of that muscle were straight. That's what that meant. Oblique usually means that they're in a curve. They curve around. Okay? So, you've got 4 rectus muscles around your eye. You've got the superior rectus, the lateral rectus, the inferior rectus, and on this other side of the eye over here, you have the medial rectus, which I will show you in the picture right after this. The rectus muscles do exactly what they say. If it is a superior rectus, it moves your eye up. If it's an inferior rectus, it moves your eye down. Now, the oblique are a bit different because the oblique actually wrap around your eye. They are not just straight, they're curved. So when the superior oblique pulls this direction, it actually causes your eye to rotate down. Okay? So looking at them in a prettier picture than that, you've got the medial rectus, the superior rectus, the lateral rectus. You can see that they're just straight muscles going straight back. So those rectus muscles do exactly what they say. Whereas the oblique, see how it goes, let me change colors real quick. See how it goes down and around? It's not actually just going straight back. That superior oblique rotates your eye. So superior oblique rotates your eye down, okay? And back here, you've got the optic nerve. Now, another muscle picture, another extrinsic muscle picture. Here's my superior oblique. Again, it's wrapped around and it's coming back. Here's my inferior oblique, okay? So when this pulls, your eye rotates up instead of going down because it's an oblique muscle. The rectus do exactly what they say. Lateral rectus, you're going to turn your eyes toward your shoulder. Medial rectus, you're going to turn it toward your nose. Superior rectus toward the ceiling, inferior rectus toward the floor. Now looking at the eye itself, the eye itself has layers to it. So I always describe it as an M&M, a peanut M&M. On the outside, you've got candy. In the middle, you've got chocolate. Well, that didn't work now, did it? In the middle, you've got chocolate. Chocolate. Now, it's a peanut M&M, so I'm going to say, instead of the peanut, I've got the skin of the peanut on the inside. Okay? The reason that I'm not putting the peanut in there is because our eye is hollow. And if you don't have a peanut in a peanut M&M, then it would be hollow too. So the outermost layer, the candy layer, is actually called the fibrous tunic. Tunic is just a fancy way of saying layer. So the fibrous layer. That fibrous layer has 2 parts to it. Toward the back is the sclera, okay? The sclera is the white part of your eye. And to be honest, I believe it takes up like 7/8 of the surface of your eye. But as we come closer to the front of our eye, that actually changes into the cornea. Remember, our eye works based off of light. There has to be a way to get the light into our eye. And in order for that to happen, this cornea has to be clear like glass. It has to be like a window to let that light in. So we've got that outer layer, that fibrous tunic that has the sclera that's white and the cornea that is clear like glass. Now, internal to that here, we have the fibrous layer. Vascular layer. I'm sure that if you're looking at this picture, you can tell why it's called the vascular layer. Look at all that vasculature. Look at all of the arteries and veins that are in there. Looking around the back, you'll notice that there's kind of this pink layer back here. That's going to be the vascular layer. In the back of the eye, we call this the choroid. Okay? But as this choroid starts to come forward toward the front of the eye, you'll notice that it gets a little bit lumpy bumpy here. Yes? This is the ciliary body. You can also call this the ora serrata because it kind of looks serrated, like a serrated knife. Okay? If you keep coming forward, eventually you actually reach the iris, that colored part of your eye, whether you've got brown eyes or blue eyes or hazel eyes, whatever color eyes you have, that is actually part of this second layer, the vascular tunic. Okay? This is the chocolate inside of our M&M. The vascular tunic is the chocolate. So it's inside of the candy, but it's not all the way next to the peanut. Okay? So, the innermost layer. You can call it the nervous tunic. In the back, it is the retina. So this is where we actually have our photoreceptors. This is where our light receptors are located. And as light comes in, it has to hit that retina in order for our eyes to actually work. If you close your eyes, can you see anything? No. And the main reason is because that light signal that the photoreceptors should be able to decode for you isn't getting there because you've closed your eyes. So you've got the retina on the inside. If you look at the eye, there is a space between the front of the iris here and the back of the cornea. This is called the anterior chamber. The anterior chamber is filled with something called the aqueous humor. It is a fluid that is about the consistency of water that basically helps that anterior chamber to maintain its shape, okay? It helps it so that it stays poofed out and your eye actually stays round. You also have a very tiny chamber. Let me get another color. That goes from the back of your iris here to the front of your lens right there. So back of the iris to the front of the lens. This space that you're seeing me highlight right now. This is the posterior chamber. That is again filled with aqueous humor. That pressure that's being put into that space by the fluid actually helps keep the eye inflated. And then the last chamber that we have with the eye is this big mamma jamma back here, from the lens all the way to the retina, and this is called the vitreous chamber. The vitreous chamber is filled with what we call vitreous humor. Now, the aqueous humor had the consistency of water. Vitreous humor has more of the consistency of jelly or jello. It is harder. It can kind of hold its shape better. And if you look at how big this chamber is, that does kind of make sense. I want something with a little bit more ability to hold its shape than just plain old water. Now, something that's interesting, the pressure that is being put out with that vitreous humor is actually what anchors your lens in place up here and your retina in place back here. So why is that important? Well, if you get into a head-on collision and your head whips forward, just like water in a glass, if you're running with water in a glass and you stop suddenly, it has a tendency to slosh forward. So does this. And if it does that, there's a real good chance that that retina is going to come right along with it. That retina is going to slosh forward too. If you're very, very, very lucky, when it sloshes backwards, your retina goes back to how it was. If you're not, the retina will tear. Literally, that vitreous humor is responsible for holding your lens in place and your retina in place, which reminds me, this big thing right here is the lens. This actually is suspended in your eye, and that ciliary body I was talking about is attached to it. You can see these suspensory ligaments here. Those suspensory ligaments actually pull or relax on that lens and change its shape from being somewhat thin to sometimes thicker. And by changing that shape, it actually makes the light coming into your eye either scatter more or become a very, very focused beam. Okay, now in the back of the eye, there is a spot where we actually want the light focused. This is called the Macula Densa. The Macula Densa is basically the most concentrated place for photoreceptors. It is the most sensitive part of your retina that can pick up light signal. So when we're focusing light with our lens, that's kind of our goal, is to hit that. Okay? Dead center in the middle of the Macula Densa, you actually have something else called the fovea centralis. So if the Macula Densa is good, the fovea centralis is like hitting 100, okay? It is where we have the densest concentration of photoreceptors out of anywhere. Now, next to that is this dude right here. You can call this dude the blind spot. It is a region in the back of your eye where you have no photoreceptors at all. Now you might be going, why? Remember that I have to get things into the eye like oxygen and glucose and the goodies so that my cells live. And my cells are living in my eye, so they make wastes. So I also have to have an exit. Those neurons that are picking up signal in my retina also have to have a way to get that signal out so that it'll travel to the brain. This blind spot is the entrance and the exit. If I want to maintain an entrance or an exit, I can't close the door. So I can't put the photoreceptors on top of this. If I do, then that's basically like saying I'm just going to put sheetrock in front of this door. It doesn't work as a door anymore. So when images coming into your eye hit that blind spot, you don't see them. You don't see them at all. And a lot of car wrecks are actually caused by that. You know how when you're learning how to drive and they'll say, okay, look, look again, and look again. One of the reasons that they're telling you to do that is because if something is driving in your blind spot, you will never see it because literally you have no photoreceptors to pick up the image that that thing is there. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. So here's one of the models that we have in the lab, and it is mid-sagittally cut. So you've got the lens, you've got the ora serrata here, which is the ciliary body. You've got the superior rectus up here, the inferior rectus down here. Here's your lens. There's the brown iris. Here's the cornea. That space between the cornea and the iris is going to be the anterior chamber. The space between the back of the iris and the front of the lens is going to be the posterior chamber. The space between the back of the lens and the retina is going to be the vitreous chamber. You've got the different layers. That pink layer is the choroid. Okay. The yellow layer is the retina. And back here, this little indent that you see is that macula densa that we were talking about earlier. Here's that blind spot, the optic disc. And you can see there's my nerve going out. Here's my central artery coming in and my central vein going out. It's an entrance and an exit. So I don't have any photoreceptors here. So it is called the blind spot. You can also call it the optic disc. You can see the retinal blood vessels as well. Now, here is another model of the eye. Do you see the lacrimal gland? Our tear-producing gland. If you see a lacrimal gland, this direction is automatically lateral. That'll help when you're trying to identify which muscle is which. You see lacrimal, it's lateral, because your lacrimal gland is on the lateral side of your eye. It's closer to your shoulder than it is to your nose. So this muscle here is the lateral rectus. Here's the superior, down here is the inferior, in here is the medial. You can actually see the tendon of the superior oblique. The white of the eye is my sclera. Here's that clear cornea that's the window to let light into my eye. You've got the brown iris and then the pupil, that hole that allows the light into your eye and can actually change shape. It can get bigger when it's darker outside, and it can get smaller when it's super bright outside. This is how nerdy your teacher is. When I was little, I remember in first grade, I used to stand next to the door when we come in from recess because I loved watching people's eyes go from these pinpoint pupils outside in the hot South Texas sun to a building that had like a 25-watt bulb as we walked in, and their pupils would get huge. That was really cool. And that's actually something you can do at home. If you take the flashlight on your phone, take your kid or your husband or even yourself into the bathroom, you can look in the mirror or look directly at the person you're doing it to and flash that flashlight in front of the eye and see the pupil change size, which again, I know I'm nerdy, but I think that's really cool. So from the side, here's the lacrimal gland. That means this is lateral. You've got the lateral rectus, the superior rectus. The white of the eye is still the sclera. There's the optic nerve coming out the back. And here, notice that this isn't going straight front and back, so this is the inferior oblique. This is the one that rotates your eye down toward the floor. You've got the anterior chamber in the front. You've got the posterior chamber back here between the back of the iris and the front of the lens. You've got the vitreous chamber back here filled with vitreous humor. And the two anterior and posterior chambers up here are filled with aqueous humor. Looking at the inside, that internal layer here is always going to be the retina because that's the skin of the peanut in that M&M. Back here you have the fovea centralis, and up here you've got that choroid layer. When it starts getting lumpy bumpy, what did we call it? The ciliary body. So, looking at the retina and the eye, histologically, looking at it from a histology perspective, okay? This is what it kind of looks like. You've got your rods and cones, which are your photoreceptors. You've got your bipolar cells, and you've got your ganglionic cells. Now, the rods and cones are the ones that pick up light, okay? Rods, any color of light will do. Cones are a little bit more picky. But right before you hit that, you also have this pigmented layer. See the cuboidal cells that are dark, kind of gray in this picture? When light comes into your eye and hits your retina, you want it to hit, and that's it. You don't want it to bounce around like a ping pong ball. So having these deep, dark cells actually absorbs the light. It's one of the reasons why people say don't get a black car, because they absorb light really well. For us, though, as humans and being diurnal, being the organisms that are, active during the day, we have plenty of light. We don't need to bounce it around in our eye. So when you look at an actual slide of the retina, you will see one single black line. Do you see that right there? That is this one layer of cells right here. That is always my landmark when I'm looking at these slides. So this is from very, very far away. This is the sclera. And unfortunately, whoever made these slides, they broke it because that space should not be there. The next layer in is going to be the choroid. From that black line to the sclera here is going to be the choroid. Now, something else with the choroid also tends to have really, really pigmented dark cells. Why? Because I want to prevent light scatter. I don't want light going into my eye and bouncing around. I want it to hit once, and that's the signal I get, the end. Now, from that black line that I showed you here to the inside of the eye, that's going to be the retina. Now, inside of your eye, right next to the retina, what's there? It's the vitreous humor, because it's the vitreous chamber. That humor that is thick like jelly. Now, this is just a little closer. Again, see that line right there? That one single chain of cells. That's how I know where the retina starts. So you still have the sclera out here. There's still that space because somebody broke it. You've got the choroid. If this was glued together, these two separate sections, it would be more realistic. But from that line, that dark line you see until you get to here, that's going to be the choroid. Okay, why are you not erasing? Hang on one second, guys. Where is my eraser? All right. Now, here's the retina on the inside. Okay, so you've got the retina. Now remember, with the retina, you have your rods and cones closest to the choroid, the bipolar cells, and then you've got the ganglionic cells next to the vitreous humor. Okay, so really, really up close, there's that one line of dark cells right there. So this is the retina. Literally, this is just the retina. You've got the choroid way the heck down here. See all this black gunk back here? This is the choroid. Then you've got the rods and cones. These are the rods and cones. These long-looking, stringy cells, these are the rods and cones. Then you've got the bipolar cells. You can see the nuclei of the bipolar cells. And then internal to that, you have the ganglionic cells. Now, the ganglionic cells are the ones next to that vitreous humor on the inside of your eye. So that's the histology. These right here are the nuclei of the rods and cones. Okay, so the nuclei of the rods and cones look pretty dense. You can't really miss them. Bipolar cells nuclei. And actually, these things out here are the ganglionic cells nuclei. So that is vision, special senses.